My husband built a perfect, automated smart home. He had his lights, his schedules, his secure digital vault. He just never realized that in our system, I was the administrator, and I was about to demote his profile to user. The fundraiser was in Encinitas, at one of those new houses made entirely of glass and white stone, perched on the cliff. You could hear the ocean crash, but you couldn't feel the air. The temperature was perfectly controlled. Marcus loved these events. He was 75, but he moved through the rooms like he owned the technology, not the other way around. He was talking to the host, a man half his age who ran some software company. They were discussing smart grid infrastructure. I was standing beside him. I had been standing beside him for 48 years. Our neighbor, Cynthia, asked me about the community garden proposal. I started to explain my idea for the new irrigation layout. The problem, I said, is the runoff on the south slope. I think if we... Marcus lifted his hand. It was not a large gesture. He did not look at me. His eyes stayed on the software man. He just raised his hand, palm out, a small dismissive gesture. An instruction to stop. He dismissed me like I'd disappear. I stopped talking. The words dried up in my mouth. I felt a sudden sharp cold right in my chest. Cynthia looked away, embarrassed for me. The conversation simply continued around the new empty space where I was supposed to be. Marcus laughed at something the host said. I turned and walked away. I went to the glass wall and looked at the black water. I saw the reflection of the party behind me. I saw Marcus animated and charming. I was not in the reflection. I had to press my hand to the cool glass just to prove I was there. The drive home to our San Diego house was quiet. Marcus hummed along with the car's classical playlist. He was energized. He talked about the host's networking setup. "You seemed quiet tonight," he said finally. He glanced at me as he turned onto our street. "I was tired," I said. "It was a good night. Good contacts." He did not know. He did not even register the moment. The hand, the silence. It meant nothing to him. To him, I was just a utility, something that was supposed to work quietly in the background. Like the lights, like the thermostat. That was the night I understood. This was not a partnership. This was an abandonment, stretched over decades, and I had just now noticed the final snap. My revenge wasn't spontaneous. It was designed. I wanted him to feel what I felt, not in one day, but across many. This is one of those long revenge stories where nothing is rushed. Smart revenge stories don't erupt. They unfold. Marcus had built this life, his digital world, his online reputation, his automated home. He thought he was the master of it. He forgot that I was the one who set it all up. I was the one who synced the calendars. I was the one who managed the hosting accounts. I was the one who held every single master password. I waited for the silence to grow until it covered everything he built. That night, I sat at my own desk, downstairs. The house was still. I opened my laptop. I logged into the admin panel for our smart home system. I looked at his profile, Marcus Main. Then I found the permission setting. I clicked Edit. I unchecked the box labeled Administrator. I checked User. I hit Save. 3 days passed. The glass house incident was gone from his mind. He was busy, back to his normal schedule of calls and managing his investments online. I went to the community garden. I drew up the new irrigation plans. I made coffee. I read. Our life appeared exactly as it had been. On Thursday, the first heat wave of the summer settled over San Diego. Our house was designed to be an oasis. Marcus was very particular about the temperature. He liked it at 70 degrees. Always. He had a schedule programmed into the smart home system. I sat in the kitchen with my laptop. I opened the admin panel. I navigated to the climate settings. I saw his schedule, 70 degrees, 8 miles a.m. to 10 knots p.m. I deleted it. Then I set a new master schedule. The house would be 73 degrees. I locked the schedule. His user profile did not have permission to override it. By noon, the house felt warm. The sunlight streamed through the large windows, heating the stone floors. I was comfortable, but I knew Marcus would not be. He came downstairs from his office at 2 odd p.m. He was not wearing his usual sweater. He pulled at the collar of his polo shirt. "Is the AC on?" he asked. He walked to the main thermostat panel in the hallway. "I think so," I said, not looking up. He tapped the glass. The screen lit up. 73 degrees. "It's set to 73, he said. He sounded annoyed. He pressed the down arrow. Nothing happened. A small message appeared on the screen. "Master schedule active." "It's not working," he said. His voice was rising. "What's wrong?" I asked. This stupid panel. "It won't let me change the temperature." He pulled his phone from his pocket, muttering about buggy software. I watched him open the home app. He tapped the climate icon. He tried to drag the temperature slider down to 70. The slider snapped back to 73. "What is this?" He tapped the screen harder. Tap, tap, tap. The app flashed an error. "Permissions required to change schedule." Permissions? He looked from his phone to the wall panel. "Why would I need permissions?" "Maybe it's updating," I suggested. I took a sip of my water. It shouldn't need to update just to change the temperature. He huffed and went back to his office. I heard his door shut. An hour later, the house was still 73. He came out of his office holding his phone. "I'm calling the installer," he said. "This is ridiculous." He paced the living room while he was on the phone. "Yes, it's Marcus. The system is locked." "No, I'm telling you, I can't change it. It says, permissions required." "What do you mean, you can't access it?" "You installed it." "What admin password?" He was quiet for a moment. "It's Marcus builds 22. It's always been that." "Well, it's not working?" "That's impossible." He hung up the phone. He looked at the wall panel with real anger. "They said the admin password isn't working. They can't get in remotely. They'll have to send a technician, tomorrow." "Oh dear," I said. "That's a shame." He glared at the thermostat as if it had betrayed him. He spent the rest of the afternoon in his office with the door open, a small desk fan whining. That evening, we were in the living room. It was finally getting dark. The heat of the day was still trapped in the house. Marcus sat in his leather armchair. He picked up his tablet. "System," he said to the air, "set evening read." This was his custom command. It was supposed to dim the overhead lights and turn on the single brass lamp by his chair. "I'm sorry," the house speaker replied. "I cannot do that." "System," he said louder. "Set evening read." "I'm sorry. I cannot do that. This whole house is broken," he snapped. He stabbed at the evening read button on his tablet. The button icon on the screen turned gray for a second, then went back to off. The lights in the room stayed bright. The lamp by his chair stayed dark. "Everything seems fine over here, Marcus," I said. I reached over and clicked the switch on my own small lamp. It turned on. "My light works." He stared at his tablet. "It's the network. Something is wrong with the whole network. The thermostat, the lights, it's all falling apart." "I'm sure the technician can fix it tomorrow," I said, turning a page in my book. He stood up. "I'm not waiting. I'm going to reboot the main router. Maybe that's it." He went to his office, where the central network hub was. I heard him opening the closet. I waited. A minute later, his voice, strained and confused, echoed down the hall. "Elena?" I stayed quiet. "Elena, did you change the Wi-Fi?" I closed my book and stood up slowly. "Elena, my computer. It's not connecting. It says the password's wrong." "Did you do something?" I walked to the hallway. He was standing in his office doorway, holding his laptop. He looked completely lost. "I haven't touched anything, Marcus," I said. I stood in the hallway looking at him. He looked so helpless, holding his laptop like a useless tray. "The Wi-Fi password?" I said. "Marcus, why would I change it?" "I don't know." He walked past me into the kitchen. "It just says incorrect password for both networks, the main and the guest." "That's strange," I said. He went to the router, hidden in the cabinet by the stairs. He pulled it out. The little blue lights were blinking. He looked at the sticker on the bottom. "The default password isn't working either," he said. His voice was tight. He unplugged the router. He waited 10 seconds. He plugged it back in. We both watched it. The lights flashed one by one, then settled. He tried to connect his phone. Still nothing. He pressed his fingers into his temples. "I can't work." All my portfolios are managed through the secure network. I can't even get my email. Can't you just use your phone? I asked. It's not the same. The app is limited, and I can't connect to the house systems without Wi-Fi. He proved his point by trying to turn on the living room lights with his phone app. The app just spun, searching for a network. The house was still 73 degrees. His face was damp. What about the password list? He asked. In the kitchen drawer. Oh, right. I went to the drawer, the one full of manuals and old keys. I rummaged through it. I pulled out an old index card. Here's one. Marcus builds 20. That was 2 systems ago, he snapped. But he typed it in. Incorrect password. Well, that's the only one I have, I said. You always kept the new ones on your digital file. Which I can't access, he said. Stating the obvious. He spent the next hour on his cell phone, trying to get his mobile carrier to create a hotspot big enough to run his laptop. The connection was slow. He kept dropping the signal. He retreated to his office, to the whine of his little desk fan. The house was silent, except for that and the sound of his frustrated sighs. The technician arrived at 11. He was a young man named Ben, with a tablet and a large bag of tools. Marcus met him at the door like he was a savior. Thank God, Marcus said. The whole system is down. Thermostat is locked, lights won't respond, and the Wi-Fi is gone. I think the whole hub crashed. Okay, let's take a look, Ben said. He was polite. He went to the hub in the closet. He plugged his own device in. He typed. He frowned. Huh, Ben said. What is it? Marcus asked, crowding him. Well, the network is active. It's just... Ben looked at his screen. The admin password has been changed. On the router in the smart hub. That's what I said, Marcus said. It's not Marcus builds 22. No, Ben said. It's not. I've tried the usual overrides. I'm locked out, so fix it. Reset it. Ben looked uncomfortable. Sir, with this model, if the master admin password is changed and locked, I can't just reset it. My diagnostic tool is being blocked. I'm being treated as a user just like you are. Marcus looked confused. So what does that mean? It means the only way in is a full factory reset. We have to wipe the hub completely. Erase everything. Everything? Marcus said. All your custom light settings, your climate schedules, your security protocols, your network permissions, everything. It will be like it was the day it was installed. Blank. How long will that take? The wipe is fast. But rebuilding it? Setting up all your devices again? Your profiles? It could take days to get it back to how you had it. Marcus looked around the living room. He looked at the dark wall panel. He looked at the bright, hot windows. He was trapped. I have work to do, he said, his voice quiet. I need my network. Then we have to wipe it, Ben said. Marcus stared at the hub. He had spent months programming those settings. His morning routine. His market open lighting. All of it gone. Fine, Marcus said. He sounded defeated. Do it. Wipe it, Ben nodded. Okay. It'll take about 15 minutes to initialize the reset. He tapped on his tablet. The lights in the entire house flickered, then went out. They came back on a second later, at a harsh 100% brightness. The wall panel by the door lit up with a welcome screen. It's starting, Ben said. Okay, first step. I need to create the new master admin account and the new Wi-Fi network. What do you want to call the network? Marcus opened his mouth. Call it Marcus Main. Let's call it Elena, I said. I stepped forward from the kitchen. Both men looked at me. Marcus looked stunned. Just Elena, I repeated, looking at the technician. Ben shrugged. Okay, Elena. And the admin password? I smiled at him. I'll type it in myself. Ben held the tablet out to me. Marcus just stood there, his arms at his sides. He watched me as I typed the new master password into the confirm field. The screen flashed. New admin profile created. All right, Ben said. He sounded relieved to be finished. You're all set. The hub is reset. The new Wi-Fi network, Elena, is active. He handed me the tablet. You're the new administrator. All the devices will need to be re-added to the network. The thermostat, the lights, the security cameras, everything. Thank you, Ben, I said. I can handle that. You'll have to do it manually, he said. Walk around, sync each one. It'll take a while. I have time, I said. Marcus said nothing. He didn't thank the technician. He didn't walk him to the door. He just stood in the middle of the living room, in the harsh 100% brightness of the reset lights, as I signed the work order. I closed the front door behind Ben. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. It was still 73 degrees. Marcus finally moved. He walked to his laptop on the kitchen counter. He opened it. He clicked the Wi-Fi icon. The network Elena appeared at the top of the list. He looked at me. His face was tight. Well, he said. Well, what, Marcus? The password. I need the password. I have to get online. I have lost half a day of work. I walked over to the counter. I picked up a pen from the cup by the phone. I took a single square note from the yellow pad. I wrote down a sequence of numbers and letters. It was not the admin password. It was the guest password I had created just for him. I slid the note across the counter. He snatched it. He typed it in. His computer connected. Finally, he muttered. He opened his browser. He opened his email. He started typing, fast and angry. He grabbed his laptop and stormed into his office. He slammed the door. I heard the little desk fan start up again. I spent the next hour walking through the house with the tablet. I reconnected the thermostat. I reconnected the living room lights. I connected the kitchen speakers. I set the temperature to 73 degrees. I locked it. I set the lights to a comfortable medium brightness. I locked them. Around 5 o'clock, Marcus came out of his office. He looked calmer. He had clearly answered his urgent emails. He went to the thermostat on the wall. He tapped the glass. 73 degrees. He tapped the down arrow. The master schedule active message appeared. He froze. He turned to me. I was sitting on the sofa reading a magazine. You locked it, he said. It was not a question. Yes, I said. I like this temperature. This is my house, Elena. Give me the admin password. No, I said. What do you mean, no? I paid for this system. I need to set my schedules, my lights, my work. I am the administrator now, I said. I did not raise my voice. I just stated the fact. You are a user. That's absurd. This isn't funny. Is this some kind of joke? It wasn't funny in Encinitas either, I said. He stopped. His face went blank. What? The fundraiser? What does that have to do with anything? You waved your hand, I said. And I disappeared. You don't get to do that anymore. He stared at me. I could see him trying to connect the two events. The party, the thermostat. He could not. To him, they were unrelated. One was a minor social moment. The other was a major technical failure. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. This is sabotage. Give me the password. No, I said. I turned the page of my magazine. He made a noise, a sound of frustration deep in his throat. Fine, fine. I don't need the house. I need my work. He went back to his office. The door slammed again. I waited. I knew what came next. He didn't just use his computer for email. He managed everything on his private encrypted cloud server, a digital vault he'd spent a decade building. It held his financial records, his investment research, his scanned legal documents. All his power. I heard him typing. I heard his mouse clicking fast. Then silence. The silence stretched. 1 minute, 2, Elena? His voice was different. It was not angry anymore. It was thin, Elena! I stood up and walked to his office door. It was open a few inches. I pushed it. He was at his desk. He was staring at his monitor. The screen showed a login prompt for his M drive. It won't accept my password, he said. He was not looking at me. He was looking at the screen. My vault. It's not accepting my password. That's not part of the house system, I said. That's your own server. I know, he said. He typed the password again, very slowly. Access denied. He looked up at me. The realization was dawning on his face. The heat of the room, the failed lights, the Wi-Fi. That was just the front door. Elena, he whispered. What did you do? What did I do? I repeated. I stayed by the door. I didn't do anything, Marcus. I just didn't stop it. What does that mean? He clicked the mouse pointlessly on the access denied message. You set up that vault 10 years ago, I said. My voice was calm. You told me you wanted it to be secure, off-site, separate from the house. You bought the server space. You set up the encryption. I know, he said, turning to face me. And I set the password. It's Marcus Builds 22. It has always been Marcus Builds 22. No, I said. It was. But the hosting service required a password update every 6 months. You hated that. You found it annoying, I watched his face. He remembered. You kept getting the reminders, I continued, and you kept ignoring them. So, about 3 years ago, you got a final notice. Update password or account will be locked. You were in the middle of a big trade. You told me to just handle it. I didn't. He started to deny it, but the memory was clear. You did, I said. You gave me the login. You told me to make it something secure and write it down somewhere. So I did. I changed the password, and I set up the recovery protocols. I linked them to my email. For security, he pushed back from his desk. So you changed it. What is it? Tell me. I don't remember, I said. Don't lie to me, Elena. This is my life. My entire portfolio is in there. The tax records, the deeds, everything. I'm not lying. I wrote it down. Just like you told me to? Where? He demanded. Where did you write it? In my blue notebook, I said. The one I keep in the safe. He walked to the large painting on his office wall. He pulled it aside. A small gray wall safe was set into the plaster. He spun the dial. Click, click, click. He pulled the handle. It didn't budge. He tried again. Faster. Click, click, click. He pulled. Nothing. What did you do to the safe? He whispered. He looked at his hands. I didn't do anything to it, I said. You just haven't opened it in 15 years. You're nervous. Your hands are sweating. You can't remember the combination, can you? He leaned his forehead against the cool metal of the safe. Elena, it's all right, Marcus, I said. I walked to my own desk, the small one in the corner of his large office. I changed that too, years ago. After the small earthquake, I worried the dial had slipped. I had a keypad installed. He looked. He hadn't even noticed. The old dial was gone, replaced by a sleek black digital pad. The code, he said. I'm not giving it to you, I said. He lunged. Not at me. He lunged at my desk. He grabbed my laptop. I'll find it. You have a file. You must. I didn't try to stop him. I just watched. He opened my laptop. The screen lit up. It showed my login icon and a password field. He stared at it. He had no idea what my password was. He never had. He typed Elena. Access denied. He typed Marcus. Access denied. He looked at the laptop, then at me. He was completely powerless. He slammed the laptop shut. You can't do this, he said. He was breathing hard. This is my money, my work. Let's try to recover the password for your vault, I said. I gestured to his computer. He looked at me, suspicious. He went back to his desk. He clicked Forgot Password on the M-Drive login screen. A new message appeared. Recovery code sent to evan@admin@gmail.com. He read it. He read it again. That's your email, he said. Yes, it's always been the recovery account. Check your email, he ordered. Give me the code. I sat at my desk. I opened my laptop. I typed in my password. He watched my fingers trying to memorize the pattern. He was too late. I logged in. I opened my email. There it is, I said. A new message from M-Drive support. What is the code? He said. He was leaning over my shoulder. I could feel his heat. I don't think I'll use it, I said. I moved the mouse. I clicked the little checkbox next to the email. I clicked the delete button. The email vanished. What are you doing? He shouted. Are you insane? That's our livelihood. It's my livelihood too, Marcus, I said. I clicked on trash. I clicked empty trash. A small box asked, Are you sure? I clicked yes, no. He tried to grab the mouse, but I had already clicked. The trash was empty. The code was gone. He stumbled back. He looked at his own phone. He started dialing. I'll call the hosting company. I'll get them to reset it. I am the account holder. I watched him. He got an automated menu. He pressed 4 for support. He waited. Yes, he said, his voice trying to sound normal. My name is Marcus Vaughn. I am locked out of my M-Drive account. Yes, I'll hold. He waited again. Pacing. Yes, Marcus Vaughn. Date of birth, 10/23/1949. I don't know the recovery email. Your system has it wrong. Yes, I can verify. My social? My mother's maiden name is... Okay. He seemed to be winning. He looked at me, a small triumphant sneer on his face. Okay, he said into the phone. The final security passphrase? Yes, it's Marcus Builds 22. He waited. His sneer faded. What? What do you mean, incorrect? That's not possible. Listen to me. No, don't put me on hold. He was quiet for a long time. No, he said, his voice dropping. I don't have another passphrase. What do you mean, one more failed attempt? He hung up the phone. He looked at it. They said one more wrong attempt will lock the account. For 72 hours. A security lockdown. He looked at me. The anger was gone. The confidence was gone. You changed the passphrase too, he said. I did. It's in the blue notebook. In the safe. Yes, I said. He sat down heavily in his chair. The whine of the small desk fan filled the silence. He was breathing quickly. He looked old. Elena, he said. His voice was cracked. Please, I need those files. He was just sitting in his chair, defeated. The little desk fan was still whining, moving the warm air around his office. Please, he said again. His voice was small. Elena, that vault is my entire life. Our retirement, everything is in there. It's just files, Marcus, I said. It's just data. It's not. He shook his head. The market opens in the morning. I have positions to manage. I have to... He stopped. He knew I did not care about his positions. What was the passphrase you tried? I asked. He looked confused. Marcus Builds 22, the boat, I said. You named your vault after the boat. It was the name of my company, he said weakly. You named your company after the boat, I corrected. The one you bought in 2022, the one I never set foot on. He had no answer to that. He looked back at his monitor. The red warning was still there. One attempt remaining. He put his hands on the keyboard. Maybe I changed it, he muttered to himself. Maybe I updated it and forgot. You didn't, I said. Maybe it's one of the old ones. Marcus Builds 20. He typed the letters one by one. His hand was shaking. He paused for a second. He hit the Enter key. The screen flashed bright red. Access denied. Too many failed attempts. This account is now in security lockdown. Please try again in 72 hours. Marcus made a small sound, like the air was punched out of him. He did not yell. He did not hit the desk. He just slumped. He closed his eyes. 72 hours, he whispered. 3 days. I'll be ruined. I turned and walked out of his office. I went to the kitchen. The house was 73 degrees. I poured myself a glass of cold water. The house was quiet. I heard him, still in his office, making a phone call. His voice was low and urgent. He was probably calling his lawyer. Or his broker. It did not matter. They would all ask for information. They would all need documents. And he could not get them. I went to the living room. I sat on the sofa. I picked up my admin tablet. I opened the home app. I tapped climate. I created a new schedule. Night. I set the temperature in my bedroom to 71 degrees. I set the temperature in his office to 75. I opened the music app. I selected a quiet classical piano playlist. The music began to play softly through the living room speakers. Marcus came out of the office. He looked pale, dazed. He heard the music. Turn it off, he said. I like it, I said. Elena, turn it off. I need to think. You can think in your office, I said. I tapped the tablet. The volume went up just a little. He stared at me. He was a guest in this house, a user with no privileges. He sat down in his leather armchair, the one that was supposed to have a reading light. He sat in the bright neutral light of the reset room. We stayed like that for a long time. The piano played. The sun went down. The lights in the room did not change. His evening routine was gone. Finally he spoke. His voice was flat. The safe. I looked up from my tablet. The blue notebook is in the safe, he said. Yes. You have the code. For the keypad. I do, he waited. I did not offer. Will you open it? He asked. He did not look at me. He was looking at the floor. Why? I asked. So I can have the notebook. So you can have the passphrase, I corrected. So you can write it down and wait and get your vault back in 3 days. Yes, he said. The word sounded painful. I stood up. I walked over to him. He watched me, his eyes wide. He thought I was going to his office to open the safe. I walked past his chair. I went to the kitchen. I put my glass in the sink. Elena, he said. His voice was begging. Please, the safe. I looked at him. I thought about the glass house in Encinitas. I thought about 48 years of being dismissed. I'm going to the garden, I said. I need to check the irrigation. The notebook, Elena. He called after me. What about the notebook? I stopped at the back door. The evening air felt good. I looked back at him. He was a small, old man in a bright, hot room surrounded by technology that would not obey him. I'll think about it, I said. I'll think about it while I'm gardening. I came back inside an hour later. My hands smelled of damp earth and crushed leaves. The house was quiet. The piano music I had turned on had timed out. Marcus was still in the leather armchair. He had not moved. He looked up when I walked in. His face was pale and exhausted. He looked like a man who had been waiting his whole life. Elena, he said. His voice was just a dry sound. I went to the kitchen sink and washed my hands. I took my time, working the soap under my nails, rinsing with cool water. I could feel his eyes on my back. The safe, he said again, as I dried my hands. The notebook. I turned and looked at him. All the energy was gone from him. He was not angry. He was not demanding. He was hollow. You will wait the 72 hours, I said. It was a statement. Yes. He nodded quickly. I'll wait. I need to know I can get in. I need the passphrase. Please. I nodded once. I walked to his office. He stood up, unsteady, and followed me. He stayed a few feet behind, as if he were afraid to get too close. I stood in front of the black digital keypad by the safe. I entered the 6-digit code. The pad beeped, the light flashed green, and I heard a soft click as the lock disengaged. I pulled the small, heavy door open. Marcus let out a long, slow breath. The safe was nearly empty. It held some old insurance papers, my mother's small jewelry box, and the spiral-bound blue notebook. I took the notebook out. His hand twitched, wanting to grab it. I did not let him. I opened the notebook. The paper was soft. My own handwriting filled the pages. Plumber. Electrician. Garden supply. I turned to a page near the back. At the top, I had written M drive. Below, it was a long, complex string of letters, numbers, and symbols. Marcus leaned in, his eyes fixed on the page, trying to burn the code into his memory. I tore the page from the notebook. The sound of the paper ripping was the only sound in the room. I held the small piece of paper out to him. He took it from me. He held it with both hands, as if it were a fragile leaf. He read it and then read it again. A wave of pure, absolute relief washed over his face. He closed his eyes. He had it. He had the key. In 72 hours, his world would be back. He opened his eyes. He looked at me, ready to say, "Thank you," ready to feel like he was back in control, but his eyes stopped on my face. He saw me standing there. He saw no victory, no anger. He saw nothing he recognized. He clutched the paper. He turned to leave the office, to go back to his chair, to begin his long wait. He stopped in the doorway. He looked at the smart home panel on the wall. It was glowing faintly, showing the temperature I had set for his room. 75 degrees. He looked down at the piece of paper in his hand. Then he looked back up at the thermostat. That was it. The realization he had the password to his vault. He had the key to his past, but I was the administrator of the house. I had the key to the lights. I had the key to the network. I had the key to the temperature, the music, and the locks. He understood. He could get his files back, but he would still be a user in his own life. He could not change the air he was breathing. He could not turn on his own reading light. He had been dismissed. This happened in San Diego. When it was done, there was no confrontation. There was just this realization he couldn't explain. I reached past him. I pressed the light switch. The office lights went out, leaving him standing in the dark, holding his small, useless piece of paper. I didn't have to say a word.